That you This week we have the privilege of starting the second book of the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, book of Shemot, which tells us of the beginnings of the exile in Egypt, tells us the Moshe's formative years, and then we have the story of Moshe at the what is called burning bush, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself to Moshe and tells him, "You are now going to be charged by being my emissary to Paro to send Am Yisrael out." And then we have this story of Moshe returning to Mitzrayim from Midyan, where he's been living, and on the way, the things that happened to him. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, exactly what happens to Moshe after he leaves the revelation that he has with HaKadosh Baruch Hu at the burning bush. We pick up here in Perek Daled. This is Perek Daled in Shemot, where it tells us that Moshe is left his encounter with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it says, "Vayelech Moshe vayashvel Yeter Chotno." Moshe leaves and returns to where he's living. Yeter, his father-in-law, who we also know as Yitro, and Ruel, and Kohen Midyan, and a few other names. That's a whole different story for a different time. Vayomalo, and Moshe tells him, El Chana, I am going to now, please allow me to go, or now I'm going to leave. And I'm going to return to my brethren in Egypt, to see if they're still alive. And Yitro tells Moshe, go in peace. And Hashem speaks to Moshe while he's in Midyan. This is in addition to what he's just had this whole long conversation with him at the burning bush. Lech shuv Mitzrayim, go and return to Egypt, because all the people who sought your soul, with all of your people who were out to get you, have died. Moshe takes his wife and his sons, and he lets them ride on a donkey, and he returns to the land of Egypt. And Moshe takes the staff of God in his hands, the staff that Hashem has miraculously done miracles with at the burning bush. And again, Hashem appears again to Moshe, when you are going to return to Mitzrayim, to Egypt. Re'eh literally means see, but he means comprehend. All the symbols and signs that I have placed in your hand, that you are going to perform before Paro, and I will harden his heart, strengthen his heart, and he will not send the people forth. Told Paro, and you should say to Paro, Hashem, this is what Hashem says, B'ni bechori Yisrael. Yisrael is my son, my firstborn son. And I, Hashem, am saying to you, Pharaoh, Shalachet b'ni v'avduni, send forth my people that they may serve me, and you refuse to send them out. Behold, I will slay your son, your firstborn. So that's the message Hashem gives Moshe. Then Moshe continues, he's on the way, alone, and he was at an inn. Hashem met him, and he sought to kill him. We don't know who the him is, but we'll get to that in a minute. Tzipora, who we know is Moshe's wife, takes a sharp rock, and she cut the foreskin of her son, and she reached his feet. And she said, you are a groom of blood to me. And he pulled back from him. Then she said, Chatan damim lamulot. You are a blood chatan for mulot, for brit milah, multiple brit milah. We're going to find out what all those cryptic things mean, hopefully, as we go through the parshanim. As I said, we're going to focus on this little incident here, but here Moshe is or somebody is on the way at an inn, and we're going to see exactly what happens in these three psukim. By the way, P.S. Just to finish the story, Hashem tells Aaron to go meet Moshe out to the desert, leave Egypt and go greet him as he's on his way back. And he left. When he meets him, at the mountain of God, which we know as Har Sinai or Har Chorev, and he hugged him. or he kissed him. I always do that. Vayishak is he kissed him. Vaychavek is he hugged him. But Vayishak he kissed him. Vayagid Moshe Aaron, and Moshe told Aaron, eight kol divrei Hashem asher shalacho, all the words of Hashem that he had sent, and this message and the mission that he was on, and all of the signs that he had commanded him to display before Am Yisrael and before Paro. Moshe and Moshe and Aaron went to Mitzrayim. They gathered all the elders of Bnei Yisrael. Aaron now becomes Moshe's spokesperson, and he relates all of the things that Hashem spoke to Moshe at Har Sinai, at the burning bush. And Moshe performed the signs before the people, or maybe Aaron performed them, we're not sure. And the people believed Moshe's mission, and they heard that Hashem had remembered Am Yisrael, and he had seen their affliction, and the people all hearing this message, all bowed down, all got on their knees, and they bowed. So again, there was rejoicing among Am Yisrael that they knew that Hashem had redeemed, was going to redeem Am Yisrael. So in the middle of all this whole story, we have this little thing here, something related to Brit Milah, these three psukim that I alluded to. Somehow he's on the way. Shem meets him and wants to kill somebody, and Zipporah performs a Brit Milah on her son, and it seems that ends whatever problem there was. So that's what we're going to focus on. Now I want to start by focusing on a Mishnah and a Gemara in Masechet Nidarim, which talks about the importance of Brit Milah to Am Yisrael. Rabbi Yishmael says, we start with Rabbi Yishmael says, this is again the Mishnah, Gedola Milah. Milah is a very, very important mitzvah. Shenichrato ala shlosh esrei brito. There were 13 different covenants created through the covenant of Brit Milah. And he bases that on psukim in Lech Lecha, where Hashem speaks to Avraham, and the word Brit appears 13 times. Rabbi Yossi says, Gedola Milah, how do I know what's the proof that Milah is a very, very important mitzvah? It's a great mitzvah. Shedochet HaShabbat Chamura. Take Shabbos, which is, of course, one of the most, Chamura means a very strict mitzvah, and Milah, in its proper time, is Dochet Shabbat, pushes aside Shabbat. Even though performing a Brit Milah is one of the 39 malachot, nonetheless, you're allowed to perform it on Shabbat if it's at the proper time on the 8th day after the child is born. And there are whole other parameters on when. But again, the fact that it is Dochet Shabbat, that the Brit Milah pushes aside Shabbat, proves the importance of Brit Milah. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says, I'll give you another proof how great Milah is. Gedola Milah, Shelo nitla lo lemoshe atzadik oleh mishah melo sha'ah. That Moshe was not given a reprieve from performing Brit Milah, even 1 hour. When the time for Brit Milah came, Shem was ready to punish Moshe, as great a tzaddik as he was, because he was lax in pushing off Brit Milah. Rabbi Nechemia says, Gedola Milah, another proof that Milah is great, Gedochet HaNigaim. Milah supersedes the commandment of Nigaim, of Tzarat. If a person has Tzarat on the Makom of the Milah, he's allowed to perform the Milah. Milah is Docha the Nigaim, the Nega. Rebbe says the following, Gedola Milah, another proof how great and important Milah is, called Mitzvot She'asa Avram Avinu, Lo Nikra Shalem Ad Shemal, with all of the challenges and all of the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Avram Avinu performed, nonetheless, he is not considered complete. He is not called complete Shalem until he has the Brit Milah. Shenemar hitalek lefanai ve'yetamim. As Hashem says to Avram right before the Brit Milah, walk before me, and through the Brit Milah become complete. Davar acher. One final thought about Brit Milah the Mishnah brings down. Gedola Milah. Milah is a very, very great and important mitzvah. She'ilmalehi, were it not for the creation of the mitzvah of Brit Milah, lo bara kadosh baruch hu et olamo. Hashem would not have created the universe except that we have this mitzvah of Brit Milah. Shenemar, as the verse says, Komar Hashem. This is what Hashem says, Im lo bariti yomam v'layla chukot shamayim ba'aretz lo samti. If it had not been for the Brit which exists night and day, the laws of the heavens and earth I would not have created. I would not have placed. So again, we see how important Brit Milah is, and we're going to pick it up now with the Gemara. The Gemara goes into one focus on one of these greatness. We had a whole list of things that proved the greatness of Brit Milah. The Gemara is going to go into the one about our parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu. Tanya, we learned the following brayta. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Omer. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says the following: Gedola Mila, which is exactly a quote from the Mishnah. Shekol zechuyot, all of the merit she'asa Moshe Rabbeinu that Moshe is going to do and does. Lo amdu lo keshinit rashel min hamilah. They did not stand for him. They were not able to redeem him when he was lax in Brit Milah. Shenemar, as the verse says in our pasuk that we started with, Vayifkesheu Hashem vayivakesh hamito. Hashem pagash is to meet him, and he vayivakesh means he sought hamito to kill him. Amar Rebbe. Rebbe says, no. Wait a minute. That's not quite the way it was, Yeshua ben Karcha. Chas v'chalila, Moshe Rabbeinu nidrash min hamilah. Chas v'shalom, that Moshe was lax in performing Brit Milah. Ella, why didn't Moshe perform the Brit Milah? Kach Amar, this is what Moshe said. Amul v'eitzei, if I perform the Brit Milah on my son, and then we're leaving to go to Egypt right now. We got to leave right now. Hashem told me I got to leave right now. If I perform the Brit Milah and then I take my son with me and we all leave on this trip, that's a sakanahi. It's a danger for the child having a Brit Milah and then traveling immediately. Because on the way, there was no hospital. There was no doctor in case something happens to the boy. Shenemar, and how do we know that traveling, that the first period of time, the first few days after Brit Milah is very dangerous? Shenemar, as the verse said, in the story of Shem, it tells us that 3 days after they had the Brit Milah, they were all in great pain. So we see from here how dangerous it is to travel after you've had a Brit Milah. That the first couple of days you're in great danger. So then Moshe says, okay, what's my other option? Amul the Esher Shlosh Yamim. If I perform the Brit Milah now and I wait 3 more days, Hashem says, got to leave right now. How can I wait 3 days to undertake this mission that Hashem has sent me on if Hashem says I got to do it right now? So what do I do? Ella. So if that's the case, Rabbi asks, so why is Moshe punished if he had no choice? He couldn't perform the Brit Milah because it would have been a danger to the son. He couldn't wait the 3 days because Hashem said you got to go right away. Which one is it? Ella, what? 3 days is the reason it says 3 days is the Gemara derives, and we have this throughout. By the way, it's codified in halacha that the first 3 days after the milah are the most dangerous for the child. That's a general principle that is derived from the story of Shem, because on the third day was the day that they were most that was most painful for them. We've derived from there that for the first 3 days of after Brit Milah are the most dangerous. Okay, so what's the reason Moshe is being punished here? And the Gemara here wants to give us reason. That what happened is when Moshe arrives at this inn, he should have immediately put everything down, performed the Brit Milah, and then dealt with setting up the inn for how they wanted to have it set up. But since he prepares or involves himself in arranging his sleeping arrangements first, that's why he's punished. So he's punished for delaying the Brit Milah long enough to set up whatever he had to set up in the Malone. That's what Rabbi wants to say. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says no. Lola Moshe Rabbeinu bikesh satan laharog. When it says vayivakesh hamito that Hashem appears to him and he wants to kill him, he doesn't want to kill Moshe Rabbeinu. Elali oto tino. He wants to kill the child because the child is the one who hasn't had the Brit Milah. Shenemar ki chatan damim atali. Because with Tzipora, after she performs the Brit Milah, says chatan damim atali. You are a chatan of damim. You were going to die here. Seirei mikaru chatan. Who is called the chatan at a Brit Milah? The baby. Havi omer zatino. So that proves that it was the baby who was in danger, not Moshe was in danger. But okay. Darash Rabbi Yehuda Bar Bizna. Rabbi Yehuda Bar Bizna gave the following drasha. B'shashinit Rashel Moshe Rabbeinu min Hamilah. At the time that Moshe was lax in fulfilling Brit Milah, Ba'u Af v'Chema u'Bila'uhu. There were two angels. One is called Af, anger. One is called Chema, severe anger, heated anger, u'Bila'uhu, and they wanted to swallow Moshe alive. Shiru mimenu elo raglav. The only part of his body that they weren't able to, that they didn't cover as though they were going to destroy, were his feet. Miyad, immediately Tzipora realized what the problem was. Vatikat Tzipora tzar, she took a sharp stone. Vatichrodet orlat bina. She didn't have a cutting knife, I guess, at the time. So she takes a nice sharpened stone and uses it to perform the Brit Milah. Miyad, immediately vayiref mimenu. These two angels left Moshe alone. That's the Gemara. So the Gemara builds a nice story around this whole event. What is happening? Moshe is traveling. He's got a baby son who was just born. He needs to have a Brit Milah. Moshe can't perform it before he leaves because it'll put the child at risk. He doesn't want to wait 3 days till the child is recovered from the Brit Milah to travel. So he travels, but he gets to an inn and he immediately is accosted, if you will, by HaKadosh Baruch, by these two angels who want to harm either him or the child. We're not sure who, but in any case, Tzipora performs this Brit Milah, and whoever is in danger is saved. And we're going to see the Parshim are going to argue, well, who was in danger? Why doesn't Moshe perform the Brit Milah? Why Tzipora? We're going to try to answer some of these questions as we go through the Parshim. But before we do that, the question that arises is, who is the baby? We know later on in Parshat Yitro, Moshe has two sons. They are called Gershom and Eliezer. Okay, so Moshe has two sons, and we're going to go through the Parshanim, and virtually all of the Parshanim are going to assume that this child is none other than Eliezer, the second one, because we already read about Moshe's first child being born and getting a name before the story of the burning bush. The second child is not mentioned, so virtually all of the Parshanim assume that the child here who has not had their Brit Milah is the second child, Eliezer, whose name we don't get until Parshat Yitro, but he's the child who is referred here. Notice, by the way, the Gemara doesn't give the child a name. It just says the child, the baby. Okay, now, the only source I found that says, wait a minute, maybe it was not Eliezer, maybe it was the first son, Gershom, is in Me'am Loes. Yeah, and Me'am Loes brings down, and I went back to a source of Me'am Loes, is Targum Yonatan on this book. And here's what Targum Yonatan says. And I'm going to, obviously, because it's Targum, it's in Aramaic, but we'll try to translate it into something you can understand. And they were on the way, and somebody was on the way, and they stopped at an inn, a house to rest. And an angel of Hashem came and engaged him, and wanted to kill him. Again, we don't know who the him is. Min, why? Because of Gershom, his son, the law having Gazir. Because Moshe had not given his older son Gershom a Brit Milah. Why didn't he give his older son Gershom a Brit Milah? He was older. He wasn't a Tino. Why didn't he have a Brit Milah? And the Gemara and the Targum Yonatan quotes the following medrash: Al Esek Yitro Chamoy, because of a business deal that Moshe, arrangement that Moshe made with his father-in-law Yitro. The Lo Shavke LeMigzarei Baram Elazar Hava Gozar B'Tanadi Itniu B'Tarvayhun. Yitro had made a deal with Moshe when he gave him his daughter as a wife. He says, I'll give you my daughter on one condition. The first son, you can't give a Brit Milah. The second son, you can give a Brit Milah. So that was the deal they made, and that's why Gershom did not have a Brit Milah. Now Moshe has left Yitro's roof. He's no longer under Yitro. He now has an obligation to give this child a Brit Milah. Only place that has this is Targum Yonatan. Everybody else, all the other Parshanim that I found, all assume that the child here that needs the Brit Milah is Eliezer, who has just been born and his time for his Milah arrives just as Moshe gets back from the burning bush, or somewhere along the way as they're traveling from Midyan back to Egypt. Okay, I just wanted to quote that one up first so that everyone will know that there's an opinion that says this whole deal that Moshe made with Yitro. We'll move on from there. Now we go to Rashi. I'm sorry. Couldn't he have lived with somebody else and not married Tzipporah? Yes, of course he could have lived with somebody else not married Tzipporah. But remember, he's in Midyan. They're all a bunch of idol worshippers. Who's he going to marry, right? Okay. As I said, it's a midrash. It's a wonderful midrash. I'm quoting it just to get it out of the way because I just want you to know that there's one opinion that says that this child is Gershom and not Eliezer, and everybody else says it's Eliezer. Okay. Now, Rashi, Vayhi Moshe baderech pamalon. Moshe's on the way and he stops in an inn. Okay, Vayivakesh hamito. Who is the intended victim of this angel who is sent by God, obviously, to tell him, hey, wake up, you got to do something here. So, Vayivakesh hamito, Rashi quotes again here that it's Hamalach the Moshe. The Malach, the angel, wants to kill who? None other than Moshe, not the child. Lefi shalom mol et Eliezer beno. The al shenit rashel nenash misa. So he quotes basically the opinion that we had in the Gemara that the angel wants to kill Moshe because he hasn't given his son Eliezer a brit milah, and because he's now reached the inn and he didn't immediately get involved in the brit milah, he's being punished, threatened with death. Tanya, now Rashi quotes the other opinion. Okay, another opinion. Rabbi Yossi. Now, interesting, in the Mishnah, it's quoted the name of Rebbe, but here it's quoted the name of Rabbi Yossi. Chas v'shalom lo nisrashel. God forbid we should think that Moshe was lazy. Ella, what did he do? Amar amol v'etzel derech. If I perform the Brit Milah and then I take, again, what we just saw in the Gemara, if I perform the Brit Milah and leave, it's a sakana hu l'tzina gad shloshim yom. For 3 days, the child is in great danger. Amol v'eshesh shloshim hakadosh baruch hu tzivani lech shuv mitzrayim. Okay, so either case we can't perform the Brit Milah. Why is he punished? Rashi again quotes the Midrash that because he got involved in preparing his arrangements first, and that he quotes again from Masechet Nedarim. Now, Rashi adds one quick thing here. This angel that appeared, how do we know that he was trying to kill Moshe? Naseh kamin nachash. He appeared in the form of a snake. Ubol ome roshovi ad yirechav. And first he would swallow Moshe from his head through his hips, through his thighs. The choser ubol, and then he would remove himself, and then he would choser bolom iraglav yad otomakom, and he would swallow Moshe's legs. So therefore, through watching this malach and what he was doing, hebina tzipar shebishvil hamilo. That's how Tzipporah was able to understand, something wrong with Brit Milah here, because that was the only part of Moshe's body that this angel in the form of a snake wasn't tempting to swallow. So obviously there was something that she understood, and that's why she performs the Brit Milah. Ibn Ezra. Now, Ibn Ezra has two. We're going to have two different Ibn Ezras to know. Ibn Ezra wrote two different commentaries on Torah. One is called the long parish. The other is called the second parish. They're both very similar. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, wait a minute. We're going to get okay. Lois's comment is Tzipporah realizes that that it doesn't matter. We shouldn't worry about that he's in danger for 3 days. We're going to see what the parshanim have to say about why now they're able to perform the Brit Milah when before they left they couldn't. Okay, we're going to get to that. Thank you. It's a good question. It's a great comment. Why all of a sudden now can they perform the Brit Milah? They're still on the way, right? We're going to get to that in a minute. Okay. Vayiba derech. Okay, they were on the way. Now, Ibn Ezra starts with the following. Am Yisrael had something that was an accepted tradition. That a Brit Milah, even though we have already from Avraham Avinu, that Brit Milah is performed on the 8th day after a child is born. That's already from Avraham Avinu. Yitzchak has his Brit Milah at 8 days. But part of the tradition that was passed down of Brit Milah is that if it's the 8th day, if he's sick, if the child is sick, we don't perform the Brit Milah. Ohu baderech, or if he's traveling, we don't perform the Brit Milah. Sheinicholet b'molicholit akev. Because while you're on a journey, if you're traveling with a caravan through the desert and the caravan keeps going, you got to go with them. And therefore, you can't hold them back. They're not going to wait for you. That leaves you in danger. And if the baby can't travel, then you're going to be left in danger. Therefore, if you're on the derech, if you're traveling, or you're not, or the baby isn't well, you don't perform the Brit Milah. That was a tradition. Uba avur ki Moshe lo yacholit akev yishlichut Hashem, and since Moshe is not able to delay his travel because he's on God's mission, God has sent him on a mission. He says immediately, get to Egypt. You got to get there and get started. This is a process. You got to get there. Ra'a bi'atzato shelo yumal. He took advice not to perform the Brit Milah. Because if Moshe is now going to give him the Brit Milah and then take him and leave for Egypt, he's going to be in danger. V'nei shalach Hashem malach. Hashem sends an angel as Kir Moshe to remind Moshe, hey, shaniach atzato, bad choice, Moshe. V'yumal hanar v'yelech lo levado. Moshe, perform the Brit Milah, leave the kid here with his mother, and you get moving. You got a job to do. The kid doesn't have to be with you. Leave him home. Leave him home with his mother, and you keep going. That's the message. Okay, that's Ibn Ezra. Okay? And what is going to happen? Now, the child will stay with his mother until she's here, until he's healed, and he'll find the next caravan coming through. What does it mean that we encountered him? Shebacholi al Moshe me Hashem shelo Allah al libo. That Moshe suddenly becomes ill in a way that, because he didn't think of this, he should have thought of this. V'zehu vayivakesh hamito. This is what it means. Hashem sought to kill him. Im lo yumal beno. If he doesn't perform the Brit Milah immediately, Hashem's going to want to kill him. But because Moshe is in the throes of this disease, he can't perform the Brit Milah. So who's performing the Brit Milah? Tzipora. And Tzipora performs the Brit Milah because Moshe can't, because he is shaking from this disease that he's overtaken him. Probably had a fever. Well, no, Hashem makes Moshe sick. Okay, even though the Medrash talks about this angel swallowing him, Ibn Ezra says that Bacholi al Moshe. Moshe got ill. He had a fever or a seizure or whatever he had. Okay? Umalato Tzipora, that's why Tzipora performs the Brit Milah, who gila la zehaso, because Moshe has already told her all about Brit Milah, all the laws. She knows it all, and she performs it. The Al Titman, you shouldn't be concerned, Bavurshu Katuv, Vayifkisheu Hashem. What does it mean Hashem met him? Ki malach Hashem, it's only an angel of God. It's not that Hashem was the one who meets Moshe, it's an angel of Hashem. Don't worry about that, because a lot of times it will use the name of Hashem to refer to an angel. And Kamo, and he brings a couple of verses, that we use Hashem, it says Hashem does something even though he's doing it through an angel. Rav Shmuel Bar Chafni Omer. Rav Shmuel Bar Chafni says the following. Chalila liot Hashem v'akesh lamit Moshe. How can you even think that Hashem would want to kill Moshe? He's just appointed Moshe to be his messenger to take people out of Egypt. How can he now go and say, oh, I'm going to kill, that he wants to kill Moshe? That doesn't make any sense. Rak, Ibn Ezra says, Bikesh lahamit Eliezer. He wanted to kill the child. That's what Vayifkeshehu. Hashem meets the child and wants to kill the child. And it's only later on, Perishu Eliezer, that we find out that this child was Eliezer. Therefore, it mentions when she performs the Brit Milah, it's throughout the story, it says Binah. It says the foreskin of her son. It doesn't say the foreskin of the child's name. It says her son. It doesn't mention his name, because he didn't have a name yet, because they hadn't performed the Brit Milah and given him the name yet. And we have a similar story by Yipalita, where somebody is mentioned sort of half anonymously, not by name, because again, he didn't have a name yet. Okay. Now that's Ibn Ezra in his long parish. In the short parish, he says the following, although it's very, very similar, there are going to be a few nuances that I felt it was worthwhile quoting Ibn Ezra's parish also. Now, some say that when it says Vayivakesh Hamito, which is what he just quoted above, that he's talking about Eliezer. The Lois Kira Akasam Kiod Lo Nikra, and the reason it doesn't mention his name is because he doesn't have a name yet. V'zeh davar asa Moshe. And now the reason that this happened is this whole thing happened because Moshe, because he couldn't delay. He couldn't delay because that would be saying to Hashem, wait, doing the Brit Milah is more important than going and saving Am Yisrael from Mitzrayim. Okay, I got to go. And then it was then that Eliezer was born. As Moshe is leaving, or perhaps even somehow when he was at the burning bush, but the Brit Milah comes up as he's about to leave Midyan, or when he's on the way from Midyan to Egypt. And because of the fact that they're traveling, he cannot give him the Brit Milah. And it was appropriate, he should have left him home with his mother, and go alone to Egypt. That's one opinion he brings down. Again, obviously, the meeting and the person who's in danger is Moshe himself, because if the child was in danger, Moshe would have performed the Brit Milah. Why does Tzipora have to perform the Brit Milah? Moshe is in pain, or he's having tremors, so he can't perform the Brit Milah. That's why he wasn't able to perform the Brit Milah, and Tzipora has to perform the Brit Milah. So that's Ibn Ezra. Chizkuni. Malone. First, he says this pasuk is slightly out of order. Should have been connected to his taking his to the story of the travels, which was interrupted by telling him Hashem's command. Since Hashem spoke to him while he was traveling, about to leave Midyan, the pasuk interrupts to tell us what Hashem's commands to Moshe were. But Yifkisheyu is lashon efkashem. I will meet them, and vayikesh hamito, that he wanted to kill him. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer Latino, shenerik yichatan damim atali, which we saw above. That for Shimon Gamliel, the proof is when Tzipora says that you're a chatan damim, that's the proof that the child was the one who was in danger. Another interpretation. By Vakesh Hamito, even though the first interpretation is that he wanted to kill the child. Second is he wanted to kill Moshe. He should have performed the Brit Milah, left the child with his mother, and immediately left in haste to go perform HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mission of taking Am Yisrael out of Egypt. That's where we start. However, what did he do? Person traveling alone can travel a lot faster than when he's got to wait for his wife and his two kids to catch up to him. Remember, he's not driving the car with the two kids in the back. They're all getting there at the same time. They're traveling on foot. Well, even though he says he puts them on the donkey, nonetheless, without having to deal with worrying about the kids, feeding the kids have to go to when they feed them, guess what? They got to go to the bathroom. You got to take care. All these things take time. That's why you go much more slowly when you're traveling with kids. When you're traveling alone, you can move much faster. He had no business. Point being, because this mission was so critical and so important, he had no business taking the kids with him. He should have left them at home and gotten there as quickly as he could. Okay. Vim Tomer. He says, why do I need a reason that he set up the inn first? That's why he was punished. Wait a minute. He should have immediately taken care of the Brit Milah, because the Brit Milah is a commandment that carries the punishment of being cut off from Am Yisrael if we don't perform it. Valichat Mitzrayim, however, is going to save the Jewish people from Egypt, was only a positive command from Hashem, which carries less weight than a command that, if you don't perform it, carries karet. So clearly, the priority should have been given to Brit Milah. Eliesh Lomar Eina Karet Mutal Al He wants to say that the karet, when a person gets karet for not performing Brit Milah, it's not the father, it's Arel Atzmo, it's the child when he grows up, and his parents did not perform Brit Milah. He has an obligation to perform Brit Milah, to attend to his own Brit Milah if his parents did not do it. Not the parents. Since Moshe figured it's not that important, he can wait till he grows up. He can always have a Brit Milah. It's not as important. It's more important that I get to Egypt as quickly as possible, and that's why he had ran into problems. That's Canaan. My first Canaan quotes Rashi's parish. Parish Rashi mission nasik malon tchila mashma mitoch parish hayalo lamulo kodem sheet asik malon tchila. Rashi seems to quote, he quoted the Gemara in the Dharm that Moshe's problem was that first he took care of his sleeping arrangements, he set everything up, and then he first was going to attend to the Brit Milah. He should have attended to the Brit Milah as soon as he got to this way station. The Tema, Tos's question is, how could he attend to the Brit Milah? There's only a one-night stay that he's at this hotel. He's not staying here for a week. He's staying overnight. As he reached the point where it was getting dark, he had to pull over and stop for the night, because you don't travel at night. Even when you're going on Hashem's mission, you don't travel. You don't put yourself in direct danger by traveling at night. And if he performs the Brit Milah now, tomorrow morning when he's got to leave at the crack of dawn, the child's going to be in danger. This whole incident happens when he's already met Aaron. He's already very, very close to Egypt. What did Aaron tell Moshe when he met Moshe? Aaron said to him, we here in Egypt, we've got all these Jews who are enslaved in Egypt. We're all worried about getting them out of Egypt. And you are coming and bringing more Jews in. Why would you do that? Jews here are being persecuted. They're being enslaved. Why are you bringing more people to Egypt to be enslaved? Even though the tribe of Levi was not necessarily enslaved, why is Moshe bringing more people to witness all the problems that the Jewish people have? So Tzipporah returned home. So Tzipporah's on her way home. In Cain, alone. So Tosfos wants to say that in reality, what Moshe is being punished is because should have performed the Brit Milah, said, Tzipporah, you stay here, you're going home anyway. Aaron meets him and says, you're not bringing Tzipporah to Egypt and the kids, you don't need them in Egypt. We don't need them in Egypt. We don't need more Jews to be enslaved and troubled in Egypt. Send them home. So once he's sending them home, he should have done the Brit Milah, say, you guys stay overnight, stay 3 days till he's healed, then go home. And that's why he's punished for not doing the Brit Milah immediately, according to that's Tzikain Bali Tosfot. Okay. Riva. By the way, Riva is a parish I rarely quote, so I want to tell you this is Rabbi Yehuda ben Eliezer, who wrote his book Minchat Yehuda in the 14th century, somewhere in the 14th century, right? Yes, but remember that women have been doing this for centuries, for millennia, caring for their children. They know how to. Allah's question was, hey, how could Moshe leave the child right after his Brit Milah alone with his wife? Okay, what? An ambulance isn't going to come to the desert. You're right. Yeah, but guess what? Women have been giving birth to babies and caring for them and having the Brit Milah. Sometimes they're in a civilized area, but sometimes they're not. So it's much. Look, the mother's going to take care of him. That's the point. And they're at a hotel, they're at an inn, so there's obviously something there for her to stay a couple of days. It's not. He didn't stop in the middle of nowhere. He didn't stop in the middle of the desert. He stopped at some oasis or some point of stoppage that he can stop. Okay. So this is a Riva, Minchat Yehuda, as I said, 14th century. Vayivakesh Hamita, Perish again. Shlomo Elazar Eliezer Beno Al Shnit Rashel Nenash Mita, because he's lazy in performing the Brit Milah for Eliezer. He's obligated. Hashem threatens him with death. Not that Hashem was going to kill him. Rabbi Yossi, again he quotes the Rabbi Yossi, Chas v'shalom no nit Rashel elo Amar im Amol ve'etzel sakani latino kad gimel yamim be'em Elmo ve'eshe gimel HaKadosh Baruch Hu tzivan lech shuv Mitzrayim M'ne'ma nenash ve'shtazik v'malon tchila kolomar, as if to say, all this is again a quote from that we quoted above from the Gemara. Hayalo lasok b'mila tchila. Why should he have been involved in the Milah first? She'otom alone, this stopover. Samuch l'Mitzrayim haya. He was already very, very close to Egypt. He was almost at the end of the journey. In other words, he wasn't 5 minutes into the journey. He was 5 minutes from the end of the journey when this happened, this incident happened, or maybe less than 1 day's travel to the end of his journey. This was the last night he had to stop over. And he could have immediately gone to Egypt. And there wouldn't be any sakana for the child because they were that close to civilization already. In the chapter 4 of Dvarim, Rashi explains this. Gam came perish Shemot. Yesh mefarshim. The af al pi shadin im Moshe shalola mola b'nei sakana haderech. And there were those that want to explain that why is Moshe being punished? Because even though there were those that say that that Moshe was correct in not performing the Brit Milah because they were danger, there's still danger of traveling. Mikol makom. No, Hashem did not command him when he says, you go to Egypt. He doesn't say you with your family. He says, you go to Egypt. Who told you to take your son and your wife? He should have done the Brit Milah when they were still in Midyan and left him with his mother. Shouldn't have started on the journey to begin with. And if that's the case, that he's being punished for taking the children in the first place, doesn't matter where this stopover was. You don't have to say that it was right on the 1 day left to Egypt. Okay. Again, he felt it was important enough to go. So that's a lot of the parshanut on this. I wanted to go into the Ramban because the Ramban wants to go through now the whole overview story and what's the order in which things are happening here and what's happening. So Ramban, we'll try to get as far as we can in Ramban before we run out of time. Shem says to Moshe in Midyan, go back to Egypt, right? Rav Avram or Belezer, I have no idea who Reish Aleph is. Somebody says he's quoting somebody, Ramban. Usually it's Rabbi Ibn Ezra who he's quoting with the Reish Aleph. Ki ein mukdam u'muchar b'Torah. We know that there's no chronological order in the Torah. Perish ukfar Omar, and he says that Hashem told Moshe in Midyan has already happened before we have this whole story about Moshe leaving. V'rabim koch, and there are many cases like that. The ein dvaro zenachol. This doesn't make sense to me. Ki adibur arishon lo haya b'Midyan rak b'Har Sinai. Shem's original instructions to Moshe to go to Egypt are delivered to him at the burning bush, which is at Har Sinai, not in Midyan. Unless we say Har Sinai is in Midyan, which I don't think is the case. And the only time Hashem speaks to Moshe in Midyan is our parsha, these two psukim that we just read. When Hashem accepts at Har Sinai that he's going to be Hashem's shliach to go to Paro, but before he does, he has to return to Midyan. Firstly, if he's shepherding Yisroel's flock, he's got to bring the sheep back home. That's the first reason he's got to go to Midyan, which, by the way, Ramban doesn't mention. But he goes, no. He wants to, his Moshe's original intention when he leaves Har Sinai, he's just had this great revelation, the burning bush, he's talked to God. According to Midrash, he's been there a whole week. He's talking to God and he's arguing with God. I don't want this job. Send somebody else. And God says, no, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. And finally says, okay. Doesn't really say, okay. Hashem says, okay, you're doing it. But he goes back home to get permission from Yitro. His original intention is to go as an individual, not with his family, and to go in disguise. So nobody will know who he is. He doesn't want to reveal who he is because remember, he's the fugitive from Egypt. He's still a wanted criminal in Egypt. So he doesn't want to go openly back to Egypt. He wants to go incognito. That's why he comes back to Yitro after he's had this revelation. He says, I want to go. Please let me go to my brethren in Egypt, and I want to see if they're still alive. Kalomar, as if to say, I want to see my brother Adam Chayim v'Yashuv. I'm just going there to see who's still alive, and then I'm going to come back. Kihu kederach bikur, like as I'm going for a visit. And somebody wants to see his family. He goes for a quick visit. He's not going to stay there for a long time. The Oz, Amar lo Hashem b'Midyan, and when he's thinking, oh, I'm only going to go for a quick visit, see what's going on there, Hashem says, no. Go back to Egypt. Kolomar kum etzemin haaretz hazot v'shuva l'eretz. You got to take your whole family, take all your possessions, take everything. You're leaving Midyan for good and go back to Egypt. The altafach echam, and you don't have to be afraid and go incognito. Ki meitu kol mavachshei ro'atecho. All those who sought your evil have left, have gone. They're all left. They're died. They're no longer relevant. You're no longer, anybody who remembers you as a fugitive is gone. Nobody's going to recognize you as this fugitive. And you have to stay there with the people until they leave. It's not you're going there and then you're going to leave and then come back and leave and come back every time. You're going to stay there the entire time now. Once you get back to Egypt, you're going to stay there until you take them out of Egypt. He wants to take his wife and children with him. Because it's a good idea to take them with him. Why should he take them with him? Ramban explains. If he brings his family, Am Yisrael is really going to believe he's serious. God really spoke to him. Because somebody isn't going to go and take his children and put them in danger if he doesn't believe that God's going to take him out. Here he is. He's living as a free guy. He's the only Jew who's not enslaved in Egypt. He's living out in Midyan. He's a free man. He's living a life of peace and quiet with his children, his wife, his father-in-law is the head of the city, head of the town, head of the land. He's not going to bring his children and put them at risk with slaves, and embitter their lives. If he is certain, they're going to be leaving very, very soon. And now Moshe is going to take his family and all the Jewish people, and they're all going to leave. So by bringing them with him, he is strengthening the emunah of Am Yisrael. That, he's got to be serious. He wouldn't be coming here with his family and kids to put them at risk. He's obviously serious that Hashem has appeared to him. He's going to take us out. And this way, by having them with them, he will not have to return to Midyan to fetch them after they've left. After they leave Egypt, he doesn't have to take a detour to Midyan to go pick up his kids and wife. They're with him already. That's not the way it happened. That's because when he gets to Egypt, Aaron says, no, we don't need any more people in Egypt. But Ramban says Moshe's intent is to bring them with him. And that's why he can't perform the Brit Milah, because he can't delay. He can't not perform the Brit. He has to perform the Brit Milah, but he can't leave them behind. So he's got this dilemma here. Now it's interesting because it says that Moshe takes his wife and sons, plural, and Ramban wants to tell us that when he left, he only had one son. She's pregnant, he only has one son at the time. Come on, because we have other cases where it says Uvnei, the sons of, and it only mentions one son. Uvnei dan Chushim. We have other psukim where single son is called the sons of, or the descendants of. At this point in time, he only has one son. Only Gershom is born. Eliezer is not born yet when he's about to leave Midyan. As the pasuk mentioned before, the Eliezer needs either the journey takes him long enough that she goes through a whole pregnancy while they're traveling, although that seems a little bit far-fetched. She gets pregnant somewhere along the way, or is pregnant when they leave. I don't know. And it seems to me, Raman says, when Hashem speaks to him at the burning bush, he only has the one son. But Tzipora was pregnant with child number 2. Right when he gets back from the burning bush, she has the second baby. Because Hashem has told him you got to leave immediately. Lo maloto, lo kara lo shem. He hadn't yet had his Brit Milah, he didn't have a name yet. The reason that she, upon doing the Brit Milah, doesn't give him a name, because Moshe is in this. He's having these chills and fever because the angel is angry at him. The achar lechto lemitzrayim, but after he arrives in Egypt, the Rosh and Natzal mikolam makshimet nafsho, and he saw that Hashem had saved him from all those who sought to kill him. Az karalo Eliezer. Then he calls him Eliezer. Ki Elohei avi be'ezviva etzalei mecher paro. V'kach iskiru rabotenu ki anomo lazehu Eliezer. And that is why all the midrashim, except for that one that we talked about above, all tell us that this child that we're talking about that needed a brit milah was Eliezer and not Gershom. Okay. And Vayoshev Artzah Mitzrayim, so Moshe returns, Iman Karim with his family. Okay, I see my time is running out, so I'm going to close very quickly with the last thought here. Okay. No, I'm almost finished. It's 5 to 9 already. I'm running late. Okay. So. Oh, it's entirely possible. Oh, the clock just died. Okay. Okay. I wanted to, it's up top. That's why I don't know. So again, I want to just go back to where we started with the whole point of the importance of Brit Milah. This whole parsha shows us how important Brit Milah is. Even though Moshe is on his way to save Am Yisrael, the mitzvah of Brit Milah overrides that, because Brit Milah is the eternal sign that we are Hashem's people, that we have a separate mission, a different mission than all the rest of the world, even though if Moshe doesn't get us out of Egypt, there's going to be no Am Yisrael. Nonetheless, Am Yisrael without having the sign of the Brit Milah is not Am Yisrael. And that's, I think, the real bottom line lesson why this Torah throws these couple of psukim. Do we really need these psukim? Do we really need this story at all? Why do we need this whole story at all? To show us the importance of Brit Milah. And I think that's really the focal point here, that here Moshe's gotten this important mission from God. He's going to save the Jewish people. Brit Milah still has importance and takes that importance. Ultimately, as we see in Parshat Yitro, Tzipporah and her sons do go back, and ultimately they rejoin Moshe, whether before Mount Torah, after Mount Torah, that's a whole different story, a whole different part Torah. But again, we see from here, as I said, the importance of the continuity of Am Yisrael through Brit Milah, through acknowledging that Brit of Hashem with Avram Avinu, with Yitzchak, with Yaakov, and again, specifically the Brit of Milah, which is what stamps us as Am Yisrael. And it's interesting, if we go throughout history, that was oftentimes, in times of persecution, Brit Milah is one of the first mitzvot that our oppressors have tried to keep us from performing, whether it's in modern Soviet Russia, whether it was during the Inquisition, whether it was the Greeks under Antiochus. Brit Milah is one of the prime mitzvot with which we cannot survive as a people. The others, of course, being Shabbat and the Jewish calendar, Kiddush HaChodesh. All of these are so critical, and that's exactly what the Torah is trying to tell us here. As important it is for Am Yisrael to get out of Mitzrayim, as Moshe to get there, to redeem Am Yisrael, mitzvah Brit Milah takes precedent. We hope and pray that Hashem, just like Hashem redeems Am Yisrael through Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem should bring us to the full and complete redemption, b'meher of Yameinu. Thank you all. I open up now for questions, comments, or feedback, if you have any questions or comments. Okay. Go ahead, Alan. Alan, you got a question?
No. Sorry.
Hello? No. Yes? No?
No.
Okay. Have a good evening, all. A good rest of the week. Next week, we're back to a regular Wednesday. And